you for having me here today. It's great to be able to talk to you all. But first I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners and the land on which we are gathered here today and pay my respects to elders past and present. Today I've been asked to speak to you all about what the Victorian Government is doing in relation to providing and promoting equitable facilities to encourage female participation. So I'll mainly be talking about today our Female Friendly Facilities Fund and the Female Friendly Sports Infrastructure Guidelines and what football can do to help promote female participation through facilities. First, I'd like to begin with this quote from the International Working Group of Women in Sport, which I think sums up as a sector what we're trying to achieve. So women's participation in sport is influenced by the extent, variety and accessibility of facilities. The planning, design and management of these should appropriately and equitably meet the particular needs of women in the community. Yesterday, I believe Bridie O'Donnell, the new head of the Office for Women in Sport and Recreation, spoke about the Victorian Government's inquiry into women and girls in sport and active recreation. The inquiry provides practical recommendations to help increase participation by females and increase engagement in governance and leadership roles in sport and active recreation. There were 9 recommendations provided with the inquiry that are listed on the screen today. Today I will be speaking specifically about recommendation number 6 of the inquiry, which states, deliver female-friendly built environments and equitable facility usage policies. The inquiry provides practical actions in how this will be achieved, including ensuring the built environment is appropriately designed by applying universal design principles and other good design considerations, encourage facility owners and managers to review access and usage policies to ensure females have a fair share of access to the highest quality facilities at the best and most popular times for both training and competitions. Address safety issues by incorporating design principles such as crime prevention through environmental design. And policies, strategies and audit tools. While there's already a number of local governments and state sporting associations that are developing policies, strategies and audit tools, facilitating a universal adoption of these practices will help drive further change. In addition to the inquiry, the Victorian Government released the Safe and Strong, a Victorian Gender Equality Strategy, which identifies sport as one of the 6 pillars to helping achieve gender equality across Victoria. As a highly visible and valued part of our state's culture, sport has the capacity to challenge gender stereotypes and discriminatory attitudes and to promote core values of fairness and respect. Having more women involved in sport and recreation is important to promoting health and well-being and improving social cohesion and inclusion. There's a number of early actions identified in the strategy. Specifically, a recommendation to do with infrastructure is to work with local government and state sporting associations to promote equitable treatment of men and women in the provision of and access to infrastructure and facilities. This is consistent with what the inquiry also said. So how are we creating change? By creating better environments through the built form and management of facilities, utilising all sport and recreation community infrastructure investment, especially through our female-friendly facilities, to make change. Through all sport and recreation community facility infrastructure program criteria, councils now have to demonstrate how the project or broader facility promotes gender equality through council policies and facility management plans. We also want to reward the efforts that clubs, councils and state sporting associations have made to date with increasing female-friendly or female participation. We've also developed the female-friendly sports infrastructure guidelines because we wanted to set some really clear expectations and standards by which all projects will be judged coming to us coming forward. So in 2014, the government made a commitment of $10 million over 4 years to develop female-friendly change facilities for players and officials for community sport and active recreation clubs across Victoria. The government has continued to recognise the importance of this and has allocated an additional $4 million in the last budget. So one of the aims of the Female Friendly Facilities Fund is to reward the effort that councils and clubs, associations and state sporting associations have done in increasing female participation. We want to increase access, equality and opportunities for females, for both existing and emerging participants and officials in sport and recreation. So the category provides grants of up to $100,000 to local governments to develop new or upgrade existing change facilities to prioritise female participation for both players and umpires. And as part of this fund, as I said earlier, we really want to reward the effort that clubs and councils and state sporting associations have already put into increasing female participation. So the lessons we've learnt so far through our application process is the need to increase increase emphasis on increasing female participation. Some councils and clubs had trouble justifying the need for the facility to be upgraded, in particular with what was already happening at that club around female participation. There's a need to improve consultation, in particular with the users of the facility, and the designs and plans needed more consideration regarding the needs for female participants. To help with that, we've developed the female-friendly sports infrastructure guidelines, and they've been developed to help councils, clubs, state sporting associations, planners to design and deliver sporting environments that promote female physical activity and practical design considerations to promote female and family-friendly environments. For sustainable change to happen, it's not just changing the built environment at a facility, but also programming, behaviour and policies to support female participation. The guidelines have been split into 3 sections to support this. The first being facility planning and design, and this addresses the physical environment of community facilities and sporting pavilions. They focus on the key concepts involved in redeveloping existing facilities, as well as designing and building new facilities with the needs of female users in mind. The guidelines in this section cover initial planning process, design principles, facility design, colours and materials, as well as building management. The second section is maximising use. So this section provides guidance on female-friendly sport and recreation programming and cultural behaviour. It recognises the different life stages of women and girls and what these life stages mean for sports programming. This section also focuses on scheduling and programming that address female needs and refers to diversity, role modelling, promotion and organisation integration. The last section is policy that drives change, and this section focuses on implementing strategy through collaborative approaches. It outlines policies pertaining to funding, access and usage, as well as measuring, monitoring and reporting procedures. So when designing facilities, there's a number of design considerations to take into account. So these being, are they fit for purpose? Do they ensure female-friendly design elements and specific requirements meet the level and type of activities being delivered, as well as the user's needs? Are they multi and shared use? And have they been designed with equitable and flexible uses in mind to capture the mix of users using the facility? Compatibility, identification of compatible sports teams and activities and clubs or organisations with similar objectives and requirements for facility design and use and management should be promoted. Universal design, so the principles of universal design should be applied to all projects and programs so they accommodate all users of all ages, gender, ability and cultural background. Public safety should also be considered. As I spoke about earlier, crime prevention through environmental design takes into account consideration between the relationship between users and physical environment in the design of public spaces in crime prevention and assists with public safety. So health and safety, so community sport and recreation facilities and their surrounds should be designed, built and maintained in accordance with the relevant occupational health and safety standards. And functionality. Facility design and layout should promote safe and optimal functionality to accommodate formal, competitive, social and recreational forms of usage and participation. So just some considerations specifically around change room designs to promote female participation. So consideration of universal design principles to change rooms and amenities for both players and officials that cater for all users and abilities, including unisex and accessible amenities. Where appropriate, consider accessible toilets and showers within the change space. Appropriate site access, both internally and externally, in order to achieve close proximity to on-field and off-field player facilities. Official change areas close to the playing fields. Provision of showers and toilet cubicles that achieve appropriate privacy. Privacy to change room entry points, minimising sight lines externally and provide screening. Appropriate located hygiene disposal points. Provision of shelves and power points at the vanities for general accessories. And provision of family change facilities, including baby change tables. I just wanted to highlight an application that we received through the Female Friendly Facilities Fund, and this project is down in Frankston at McClellan Park. The project was to deliver 2 additional change rooms with supporting amenities to support female participation. At the time of the application, the club had 106 female players in mini-roos and junior competitions, but the club could not maintain a senior women's team, and the reason provided was the lack of appropriate change facilities. The facility has recently been completed and opened, and now the club have a female senior team at that reserve. So in addition to change rooms, what else can football clubs and councils do to promote participation for women and girls with their facilities? So increase capacity and quality of venues by installing better lights or new lights, drainage and irrigation, synthetic pitches for games and training, and better change facilities. Provide new venues in growth areas, better partnerships with schools, work with cricket on ground sharing and design arrangements, improve the way grounds are managed, identifying what could be training facilities and what could be match facilities. When upgrading lights, upgrade the surface too, including the grass types to increase the capacity of ground usage, and synthetic facilities can provide 3 times more use than natural turf can. So what's next for Sport and Recreation Victoria? We'll continue to support female-friendly facilities and provide additional case studies and videos to show what we're doing and what's happening out that councils and clubs are doing that's good to share. We will continue to work with Football Federation Victoria and councils on facility provision for football. And I also encourage everyone in the room to continue to push for equality in both facility provision and access to high quality training and playing facilities for women and girls as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jessie. Now, joining Jessie on stage, would you please welcome City of Banyule Manager, Leisure, Recreational and Cultural Services, Darren Bennett. Welcome, Darren. And the President of Heidelberg United FC, Steve Tsalikidis.
Obviously, quite a few things happened at Heidelberg. We were successful with the a grant for the female-friendly change rooms, and that was delivered this year, or at the start of this year. So the women at Heidelberg are very, very happy, and thank both the state government, Sports and Rec, and Darren and the team at Banyule. So that's great. And now we're looking at doing, or hopefully being successful with a $10 million master plan for that area, which obviously will also help our women's program.
So just to give you a bit more background on that project, Olympic Village, which is Heidelberg United's ground, it's been their home since the 70s, but it was originally built for the 1956 Melbourne Olympics. So you can imagine what the bathrooms and the facilities looked like. There were still urinals in the toilets until March of this year. Council hadn't spent a cent on the facility since the 70s, and the grandstand, the VIP viewing pavilion and the 500 Lux light towers were all paid for by members and club money. So this is the first time, as a result of a really good committee for a few years, that the relationship with council has improved, and you're starting to see change. So fantastic. Can you tell us why you originally approached council?
Well, if we're all honest, we're all there for the same reason. I mean, if we look at you know, the council's long-term strategy and all that, we're all aligned. I mean, we're there to try to help people, either get off the streets or be in a sporting environment, feel safe, feel like they're part of a group. So the alignment was there, and it always has been. I think the communication, possibly the respect, the communication, transparency wasn't. And it's credit to Banyule and to the people at Heidelberg that, that relationship, it took a while, but, we're moving forward in leaps and bounds. So I thank them, and I thank the people at Heidelberg. And you mentioned, the prior committees and prior members and so forth. I think one of the things we've all got to look at is, forget about today, we all have an obligation to leave a legacy behind for the next generation of children and so forth that want to play sport. So they did it for us, and we're obligated to do it for the next generation. I think that's what we're trying to do at Heidelberg.
Darren, can you perhaps tell us how the City of Banyule decides which projects you're going to support for things like the female-friendly change room project? How do you make that decision?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's, I guess, just to give it a little bit of context, in local government land, we have to look at all sports. So it's not just football and the needs of football. We also have sports right across the horizon. The interesting thing is, based on what Jessie outlined before, is the state government policy is clearly about female participation and female sport, and all codes are going on a curve like that, all sports. What we do is, for us, data is king, and it's something I must say that FFV have done historically very well, not particularly in the last 2 or 3 years. They've really articulated well their participation numbers, not what they think they're going to get, what they have now on the ground. And our approach is, look, the reality is we just have too much to do. We have too many, we've got ageing infrastructure, you know, our facilities aren't great, we're the first to admit that. But for Banyule, I mean, we've got probably 48 pavilions across a variety of sports. So what we've done is actually audited all of those facilities. We then link up the now participation numbers against those audits, and that gives us, against the guidelines as well, what we need to have and where those gaps are. And then we have a priority list that essentially we work through. So that's pretty much how we get the priorities.
Can you outline some of the challenges that you faced with the Heidelberg United female-friendly change room facility? What did you come up against?
Yeah, look, I guess before I go into that, it's important to understand each local government's different, and particularly for the people in the room. I mean, you know, broadly, you've got your growth councils, rural councils, and inner metro councils. They all have different challenges, particularly for our inner metro. We don't have any more space. So we have very limited grounds, we have very limited facilities, we can't expand facilities, so we're really trying to make the best of what we've got, and that means retrofitting pavilions. And that fantastic facility up there that Jess showed, it just can't fit, which the site conditions don't allow. So we need to be, I guess, quite innovative in the way that we try and make sure that we get a good outcome, but also that can physically fit. The other challenge is just the dollars. You know, the reality is that we had a great partnership with Heidelberg and Sport and Rec. Of that development, we got 100K out of Sport and Rec and 100 out of Heidelberg, and the rest was left to local government. So, you know, rightly or wrongly, the reality is local government pick up the majority of that renovation, that spend, that facility provision.
And the challenges you faced?
Well, I just want to thank Darren for the $10,000 discount, because it was 110 that we had to contribute, but and it's good because we haven't paid the balance yet.
I was going to remind you of that, Steve.
Thanks, mate. Look, the challenges are there for everyone. I mean, I agree with Darren as far as the facilities and that go. If you had a blank canvas, you could do amazing things, but the reality is we're stuck with what we've got. We believe we can do some great things there, and I mean, it's not only for Heidelberg. I mean, you know, we're struggling to grow because of facilities, and we've got such a massive demand, and the last thing we want to do is push, you know, kids away, boys or girls. And even the vets, I mean, we can't even have a vet side anymore. Our State 2 side in our women's had to go because the facilities aren't there. We are looking at doing some things, you know, even though we've got a master plan, we're trying to do some of the works where we're trying to fundraise some money as well that'll complement the master plan, because I think if you wait, you may wait for a very long time, and I'm not criticising anyone up here, but that's the reality. Darren's right about the challenges. The other thing, I think Jess said, the schools, I mean, maybe they're untapped, especially in landlocked areas. We can have a look, you know, if there's a strategy around maybe spending some money on the schools, putting some lights and so forth up and some synthetic pitches, because they do have the space. And I went to La Trobe High and I noticed Melbourne City are loving my old high school because there was a lot of land and they could actually do something there. So, you know, we have to look outside just the box, I think.
Indeed, think creatively. Jessie, just briefly, how can clubs influence how much money or how much funding gets put aside for facilities?
by councils or by themselves? So we would recommend that clubs start putting away some money to invest in their facilities, which will then help with going to councils to start having those conversations around upgrading or what their future needs are for their clubs. It really helps. Councils don't have a lot of money. We don't have a lot of money either. I know clubs do their best as well, but it does help have that conversation with councils when you are actually able to bring something to the table as well.
So creativity, innovation, and a very large piggy bank, I think, sounds like the key. Are there any questions for our three panellists? Oh, straight! I didn't even get the rest of the sentence out.
Hello, my name is Rossio. I'm Vice President at Banyule City Soccer Club. So my question is actually to Darren. Firstly, I want to say thank you to Banyule City because we there's money budgeted to redevelop our pavilion, which is been a long time coming. We have also lost our female team because of it. We had a team, they left, our pavilion was very bad. And for the 2018-19, hopefully, what you have planned will go ahead, or what we're planning should go ahead. We'll see like a big increase in female participation at our club. So I've got two questions. One is more on the lines of, so I was part of Shaping Banyule, where you are actively trying to get people involved in participating in outdoor activities. And as a community soccer club, we are trying to do our best to do that on a volunteer basis, like we don't get paid for it or anything. So when we try to entice people to come, and when our season finishes and then we have to share our grounds with cricket, how are we able to utilise a ground that's an overflow ground for our members when we're actually told that we're not allowed to participate on that ground anymore, and then we get put onto other grounds that are mediocre? So I want to know is, one, how can we utilise those grounds through that summer period without having to ask for permission? Because we could grow more female participation in that time frame. And secondly, that's basically my biggest question. So thank you.
No worries. Look, that's a real challenge. I guess the first point is anybody who uses council asset needs to ask and needs to go through a process, and we do that for a number of reasons, and it's probably risk related and risk driven for us. I guess coming back to the point that I mentioned before, we have to provide for a number of sports, and one of the biggest challenges that we have in local government, and it's probably across all field-based sports, is shared use. We have to have shared use facilities because there isn't any more land, and I'm talking not in a metro growth area, I'm talking in a metro area or a built-up metro area. The pressure on our open space and sports grounds in Banyule is immense because we're what we call an infill council. So all of those backyards are getting built with, small apartments. So the reality is that there used to be a legislation which identified a winter club and a summer club, and traditionally the winter clubs were allocated between April and September, and then the summer clubs were allocated between September through to the end of March, and that was legislation. Now we see, which is great, and don't get me wrong, I think it's a fantastic thing that the sports are generating participation and looking at alternative models to try and get participation up, because as Steve said before, that's what we're on about. But it's a real challenge because cricket is doing that as well. And they're saying, well, where's our ground to play? And so is football, and so is soccer. So we've got this fantastic problem where we've got all this participation, we don't have enough grounds, and I think that, trying to negotiate that is a really difficult space. So, somebody mentioned schools before. To me, I think that is absolutely the answer, is to try and utilise school facilities, get them up to scratch so we can try and get more participation.
We've got our own ground that we got lessen the load for the ground and to allow the grass to grow back. But there's a whole lot of, like, it's only children. You know, we're training maybe once a week, so it's not going to really impact the ground in that regards. But yet we still get told that we're not allowed to play at our own private, like, you know, just specialised football ground. So why is that the case for us?
Well, I think, again, it's about maintenance and it's about turf. A lot of the surfaces, they don't have the capacity to actually grow. We need to rest them during grow period because they do get heavily utilised. Now, generally, turf surfaces can take 20 to 25 hours per week use, or else they deteriorate. And it's what our challenge is to try and ensure that we rest grounds, we get good vigorous grass growth during the growth period, so it can actually sustain the intense use that occurs, particularly during the winter sports. So we're balancing that all the time with participation, with what facilities we have, you know, and how we can allocate, and it's a real juggle, and it's a real challenge.
Can I add that problem's for everyone? We're not allowed to be on our ground either for that particular reason because it deteriorates through winter, and then councils have other issues.
It comes down to a seasonal allocation. So it comes down to a season in the summer and a cricket season and a winter season. So.
Could there be something that to allow like children to play on it, like in certain areas?
Darren, are you around for the afternoon tea break? Yeah. Are you going to stick around? Can you have a chat to Darren in the afternoon tea break? Sorry, just for the interest of people that do have to head off on time. One more question?
Yeah, just a quick one to Darren. Thanks, mate. How do councils make provisions for synthetic pitches? So what's your council doing? The 20 to 25 hours, as Jessie spoke about, you can triple that, maybe even a little bit more. How do you make those provisions for the synthetic pitches? And should Sport and Rec maybe have a dedicated fund that can be drawn upon other than I think, Jessie, it's the major facilities fund it comes from?
Yeah, look, I think, you know, it's certainly a space that we're actively looking into now, not only for soccer, but for other codes as well. We have done a synthetic strategy, so we're looking at synthetics now across all sports. The challenge is the cost of actually the upfront capital cost of delivering that, the maintenance cost, because you still need to maintain that synthetic facility and infill rubber and so on and so forth, and also the replacement cost. Now, if you hammer a synthetic, you're replacing it in 10 years. So that whole life cycle cost needs to be considered. The other thing that certainly where we're heading is that we want to try and identify a number of synthetic sites, predominantly on school sites, so we get the best use. We delivered one up at St Helena, which was a great outcome, where it gets used by the school during the day and then it gets used by clubs at night. But that was over $1 million, you know, in delivery. So the big challenge is funding. Back to SRV, we'd love a designated fund, of course we will. Again, the challenge for us is the actual percentage, you know, towards that $1 million or towards any project. If you have a look at the percentages over time, the lion's share is left with local government to fund. So it's a real challenge.
Darren, I think you're going to be very busy in the afternoon tea break. And sorry, folks, we do have to move on. If you could have a chat when we finish, that would be fantastic. Jessie, will you be sticking around as well?
Yeah.
Excellent. Perfect. Ladies and gents, please thank Jessie, Darren and Steve. Thank you so much.